Most all-terrain tire conversations collapse into the same few names almost immediately. That is part of what makes this category tricky. Once one or two famous tires become the default answer, a lot of genuinely strong options get pushed into the background before most buyers ever look closely enough to see what they actually do well. And that matters, because some of the smartest all-terrain buys are not the ones getting the loudest praise. They are the ones quietly delivering better road manners, stronger wet grip, better value, or more everyday logic than their reputation suggests. That is what this conversation is about. These are not random bargain tires or obscure experiments. These are real all-terrain options that keep making a stronger case the more you look at current owner feedback, warranty coverage, and how they behave in the conditions most people really drive through. One of them shows 96% recommended over roughly 14 million owner-reported miles. Another delivered the best wet braking result in Tire Review's 2025 aggressive all-terrain test. Another is still so new that its review volume has not caught up to its potential yet. Some lean road first, some bring more rugged credibility, some are newer and still under the radar. But all five feel like tires more people should be talking about. So if you are tired of hearing the same obvious AT recommendations on repeat, this is where things get more useful. Subscribe if you want more practical tire breakdowns like this, and drop a comment with the most underrated AT tire you think people keep sleeping on, because starting at number 5, we begin with a tire that often gets dismissed as a style first choice, even though the real story is more interesting than that. At number 5, the Nitto Recon Grappler AT lands here because it is one of the easiest tires in this category to underestimate. A lot of drivers see the tread design, the sidewall styling, and the Nitto name, then immediately assume this is mostly about appearance. But once you step back from that first impression, the Recon Grappler actually has a much more practical ownership case than it gets credit for. Nitto backs it with a 55,000 mile limited treadwear warranty on LT metric and flotation sizes, and 65,000 miles on hard metric sizes. That already puts it in a more serious everyday conversation than a lot of style-forward all-terrain tires. The company also talks openly about road noise control and ride comfort as part of the design, which matters because an underrated tire is usually one people have pigeonholed too quickly. The owner data on Tire Rack reinforces that point. The Recon Grappler shows 88% recommended with about 1.1 million miles reported, and the survey notes point to strong dry traction, solid wet confidence, and better tread wear than some people would expect. Then, the test findings add another useful angle. In Tire Review's 2025 aggressive all-terrain comparison, the Nitto posted the best straight-line aquaplaning resistance in the group at 115.2 kilometers per hour. It is not a winter specialist, and it is not the quietest option here. But as a tire that blends aggressive looks with real road behavior and a useful warranty, it ends up more complete than the usual assumptions around it. This is the tire for someone who wants a truck to look properly tough without sliding into a tire that becomes annoying on normal roads. That is a narrower mission than the tires above it, which is why it opens the list instead of climbing higher. But as a sleeper choice for warmer climates and mixed daily use, it earns more respect than it usually gets. The next tire, though, feels underrated for a very different reason. It is simply calmer and more durable than many people expect. At number 4, the General Grabber A/TX earns its place as the tire that has been quietly doing the hard work for years without getting nearly enough spotlight. In a category where newer launches and louder branding tend to dominate attention, the Grabber A/TX can feel easy to overlook. But the longer you look at the numbers, the harder that becomes. General gives it a strong ownership foundation right away. The Grabber A/TX carries up to a 60,000 mile limited warranty on metric sizes and 50,000 miles on LT and flotation sizes, plus a 45-day customer satisfaction trial. It also carries the 3-peak mountain snowflake rating, which keeps it relevant for drivers who want one tire to manage commuting, bad weather, and rougher weekend use without having to split the difference too hard. See, it's then the Tire Rack survey data really starts doing the talking. This tire shows 96% recommended with about 14 million miles reported, which is a huge sample for something people do not mention nearly often enough in everyday AT discussions. The scores stay especially healthy in wet traction, winter traction, tread wear, and off-road confidence. That is exactly the kind of broad competence that creates long-term owner trust, even if the tire itself is not treated like the hottest thing in the segment. Research like that matters because it is much harder to call a tire overrated or underwhelming when millions of miles of owner use keep painting the same picture. The Grabber A/TX makes the most sense for buyers who want a traditional truck-style all-terrain with genuine year-round usefulness and proven longevity. Oh, it is not the most refined tire in the group, and it does not have the freshest marketing story. But as a dependable low-drama tire that keeps showing up well once real ownership starts counting, it is absolutely underrated. It is also the kind of tire that usually feels better after 2 winters than it did in a quick first impression. And if you want something more modern, more polished, and still oddly under-discussed, number 3 pushes further in that direction. And number 3, the Yokohama Geolandar AT4 feels underrated because it has the profile of a tire that should be getting more attention than it currently does. It is newer, it comes from a major brand, and it was clearly built to answer the modern all-terrain buyer who wants better refinement without walking away from real durability. But because it does not dominate the usual internet shorthand yet, it still feels like a tire many buyers have not fully processed. Yokohama positions the A/T4 around smooth, quiet, on-road behavior, real off-road durability, and dependable all-weather traction. It carries the 3-peak mountain snowflake rating, a 30-day satisfaction guarantee, and up to a 65,000-mile limited treadwear warranty on P-metric and Euro-metric sizes, with 55,000 miles on LT-metric and flotation sizes. That is a strong spec and warranty story for a tire that is still building its reputation with a lot of mainstream buyers. Part of what makes it underrated is timing. Tire Rack still lists it as not yet rated because the customer sample is still young, and that can keep a tire from getting the same casual recommendations as older names with massive review volume. But the product brief itself is compelling. This is an on-road all-terrain that is supposed to give drivers quiet comfort, all-weather confidence, and enough toughness to handle more than polished pavement. For a lot of daily driven trucks and SUVs, that combination is exactly where the market keeps moving. It also tells you something important about this tire. The reputation lag is being created by age and awareness, not by a weak official spec sheet. So this is the tire to watch if you want something newer than the usual proven veterans without jumping into something half-baked. It has the bones of a very smart all-rounder, and that alone makes it feel overlooked right now. Still, if you want an underrated tire with a far more established owner story, the next one is already sitting on one of the strongest road manners resumes in the category. At number 2, the Continental TerrainContact AT is the tire that many off-road purists underrate simply because it refuses to act more hardcore than it needs to. This is not the tire for buyers who want the meanest sidewall photo or the toughest desert racer image. It is the tire for drivers who spend most of their life on pavement and still want all-terrain credibility without ruining the everyday experience. That is a very real mission, and Continental does it better than many people expect. The official ownership package is already strong. Continental includes the TerrainContact A/T under its Total Confidence plan, with a 60,000-mile limited warranty, a 60-day customer satisfaction trial, road hazard coverage, and roadside assistance. The brand has always leaned into road behavior here. The product positioning is clear. This tire is supposed to keep things quiet, composed, and wet weather confident while still handling dirt roads, trails, and rougher surfaces when needed. The owner data is what turns that road-first pitch into something more convincing. Tire Rack shows 95% recommended with about 8.7 million miles reported, and the feedback stays especially strong in wet traction, ride quality, low noise, and tread wear. Tire Rack's own on-road all-terrain testing has also used the TerrainContact A/T as a benchmark-style reference point, which says a lot about how credible its daily driving balance has become. That is a serious real-world endorsement for a tire that often gets ignored by people who assume a civilized AT must automatically be a weak one. In actual ownership, that kind of calm competence can matter more than a tougher image. This is the underrated choice for truck and SUV owners who are honest about how they drive. If rain, highway miles, daily comfort, and long wear matter more than extreme mud performance, the TerrainContact A/T deserves much more attention than it gets. It just runs into one tire that feels even more underrated because it combines overlooked value with genuinely strong current test performance. At number 1, the Kumho Road Venture AT52 takes the top spot because it might be the clearest sleeper in the all-terrain category right now. This is the tire that many buyers scroll past while heading toward bigger name options, even though the actual data gives it a much stronger case than that behavior suggests. And once you look at both recent testing and owner feedback together, the underrated label becomes very hard to argue with. Kumho gives the AT52 a serious ownership profile. It carries a 55,000-mile warranty on Euro and P-metric sizes, 50,000 miles on LT and flotation sizes, and a 30-day satisfaction trial, plus the 3-peak mountain snowflake rating. On Tire Rack, it shows 96% recommended, with about 1.9 million miles reported. And the survey scores stay strong in wet traction, winter traction, tread wear, and everyday comfort. That is already enough to put it firmly in the conversation. What pushes it over the top is the test story. In tire reviews 20/25 all-terrain comparison, the AT52 delivered the best wet braking result at 65.95 meters and the best wet handling time at 55.69 seconds, while also scoring very well for dry handling and value. That is exactly the kind of result that should make more people pay attention. Yes, the same test also noted firmer ride behavior and lower comfort than the best balanced rivals, so this is not a magic tire with no downside. But that trade-off is part of what makes it such an interesting sleeper pick. It brings much more real capability than its reputation suggests. For drivers who want a tire that feels smarter than its price, stronger than its visibility, and more serious than people assume when they first hear the brand name, the Roadventure AT52 is one of the clearest sleeper choices in the category right now. It is the tire that deserves a lot more conversation than it usually gets. So if you want the short version, the Nitto Recon Grappler AT is the style-led sleeper that still behaves better than expected. The General Grabber ATX is the proven workhorse too many people skip over. The Yokohama Geolandar A/T4 is the newer polished option more buyers should be watching. The Continental TerrainContact A/T is the road-first all-terrain more people should take seriously, and the Kumho Roadventure AT52 feels like the biggest sleeper of the whole group. The bigger lesson is simple. Underrated does not mean perfect. It means the gap between reputation and reality is wider than it should be. That is exactly where smart buying happens. Once you stop chasing only the loudest names, you start finding tires that may fit your truck, your roads, and your budget much better than the obvious short list ever would. If you want more practical tire rankings built around real ownership and not just hype, subscribe and stick around for the next one. And if you have run any of these tires yourself, your long-term experience is usually where the real story starts to show. A tire can sound great in a spec sheet summary and still reveal its true personality only after months of weather, wear, and highway miles. So tell me in the comments which underrated AT tire you think deserves more credit, or which one has surprised you most in real life.